Hey there, welcome to the IG Live today. Very excited to talk to you guys. Couple things. One is, today is a great example of how the stock market actually has nothing to do with the economy. So a few weeks ago I said this, somebody asked the question, why is the stock market going up? The economy is horrible. And the stock market is not about the economy. This is why so many people lose money in the stock market. The stock market is it measures the world's level of uncertainty. It's like a psychological, it's like the stock market's a therapist and the entire world is the patient. And when the stock market goes down, it means the entire world is uncertain. And when the stock market goes up, it means there's a little more certainty happening. So today, we had bad news in the stock market. Hey there, hey Joe, hey Prima, hey Yernisy, whatever. Today we had horrible news about the economy. There's 3 million people filed for unemployment. So you could say, why is the stock market going up? And I was just on a podcast actually, and I didn't know. If the bad news provides certainty, then the market will go up. Now, why is a loss of 3 million jobs? Why is that certainty? Because maybe there'll be 10 million jobs lost next week. Well, a couple things. One is we were suspecting it was 3 million, but we didn't know. It would have been much worse if it was 6 million. But since 3 million came within range of what we were expecting, that's certainty. The other thing that's interesting is that every week for the past 4 weeks, there's been fewer and fewer people filing for unemployment claims. Now, by the way, 3 million is an enormous amount. If all we knew was, if we didn't know the other 5 weeks and someone just told you, hey, if someone told you a year ago that there was going to be a week with 3 million unemployment claims, they would have said, you're insane. That has never happened in the history of the United States. So just 3 million alone out of context is so bad, the market would have crashed unbelievably if suddenly we were told there's 3 million people unemployed. But the market went up because actually it's the fewest number of new unemployment claims in the past 4 weeks, and the trend has been down. So hopefully, you can suggest that we're getting a little bit more certainty on where the bottom of the economy is. You can ask, are we flattening the curve on the number of people who are unemployed so it won't overwhelm the unemployment system or the fiscal stimulus system or whatever? We're starting to see, hopefully, light at the end of the tunnel. So you have trending down the number of people filing for unemployment. You have trending up the number of people returning to jobs because states are reopening. Hence, you have a lot more certainty in the stock market than there was 2 months ago, and hence the stock market is going up. So a lot of times companies will say, hey, we're cutting our dividend, we're not making enough money, and the stock will shoot up because at least everybody was worried. Now, that's the worst of it. It's over. It's like being told, hey, you have stage 2 cancer, but you're going to live. And so at first, if you're just told you have stage 2 cancer, and we don't know yet, you're going to feel horrible. But if you're told you have stage 2 cancer, pause, but you're going to live, then you might actually feel good because you just anchored yourself really low. Your expectations were really low, and now you shot up. So certainty for the stock market is much more important than uncertainty. But for you as a human, it's much more important to be able to live with uncertainty. So you're only going to, this is really important. For me, I was only able to find some degree of success when I went headfirst into uncertainty. So if you start writing and you write something that's completely new and unique, you're uncertain if it's going to work. But if I just write Harry Potter, it's so certain that this is a good idea that it's not going to work. Because people will say, oh, I already read that. I already read Harry Potter. I don't really need to read something, Jimmy Cotter and, about a boy who becomes a wizard or an angel or whatever. People will say, oh, I kind of saw that story already, so they won't trust you. So what was interesting about something like Lemony Snicket was it was sort of Harry Potter, except he was a bad kid magician. So it took the concept and it added something on it where you're a little uncertain, like, why would that work? Let's try it. Let's do an experiment. The experiment worked, and it became a huge series, almost as big as Harry Potter. So I call this, negative ideas. So you take an idea that works, do the negative of it, that also might work. So, Harry Potter, Lemony Snicket, great example. Think of the structure of many stories. Darth Vader was the villain of Star Wars. But when you kind of go through the entire series, Darth Vader starts to appear more like a hero. So it's the transformation from villain to hero that often makes some stories very powerful. And so thinking in terms of negatives is often very useful. So I was just on a podcast and I heard this great example of idea sex. This guy, Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, was a computer programmer. He borrowed a movie, I think it was Apollo 13, from Blockbuster. He lost it, returned it a few months later, and he had to pay a $40 or $50 fine for the movie. And then he went to the gym after that. He was like, I'll pay the $40. He went to the gym after he paid his fines at Blockbuster, and he was, going on the treadmill at the gym, and he started thinking, I pay a subscription fee at this gym. It doesn't matter how many times I use it or not use it. I could use it every day or I could not use it at all. I'm still paying the same subscription fee. So gyms plus Blockbuster equals Netflix. That was perfect idea sex. Take two things completely far apart, put them together, and that's idea sex. But also he used this concept of negative ideas. Like, what if I don't have to pay for a video rental at all? What will happen? What's a business model that might work? So, with Zipcar, think about Zipcar. Let's look at the evolution of Zipcar to Uber. So Zipcar started around 2002, 2003, and it was this idea. Robin Chase, who started Zipcar, she got this whole fleet of cars, and the cars were spread out all over the city. And if you were a member of Zipcar, you could walk up to any Zipcar, it'll unlock, and you could drive it and take off and park anywhere. But now what if I started a company where I didn't own all the cars, but people could still find my car using a mobile app and, find a driver and drive in the car. So suddenly that's Uber. So you always have to ask these questions that nobody's ever asked before. So sometimes you ask idea sex questions. What if I combine the gym and Blockbuster? Oh, Netflix. What if I combine pop culture with art? Pop art with Andy Warhol. What if I combine, any number of things. So, but then there's other types of questions. There's negative ideas. So what if I do the opposite of how people have always been doing this? Will I have a better result? So what if we don't vote at the polls? What if we all vote on the internet? Will that create a better version of democracy? Will that create a business model? What if, anything. What if I could figure out a way to transfer money without credit card fees or without banking fees? And it's totally private, so it goes around the banking system and nobody in the banking system sees my transfer. Well, that might lead to thinking about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin sort of evolved out of this belief that, hey, humans shouldn't be involved in my money transfers. But when I transfer money at a bank, let's say you live in China and I transfer money to you. I go to my bank now and I tell them where I'm transferring it. They go to the local New York Federal Reserve Bank. That goes to the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. That goes to the SWIFT International Wiring System, which then goes to the Chinese Central Bank, which then goes to the local bank in that region of China, which then goes to the very local bank Chase. And so, branch. And so there's like 8 points of human contact to transfer money. And everybody's looking, and the IRS is looking, and the CIA is looking, and the Chinese are looking. And so there's no privacy. There's too many points of human error. And so thinking, well, what if I got rid of all that? What if I got rid of the whole banking system? That's what led to the thinking of Bitcoin. So you can say, well, I can just send gold to somebody in China, but you can't really. You can't send $1 million worth of gold to someone in China. And if you send just the promise of gold, you're still using some sort of banking system. So Bitcoin is this very real way around these fundamental flaws of human error and privacy and many other issues in the banking system, in a centralized currency like the US has, like every country has. So, asking these questions leads to these phenomenal results. Or you can say, so that's idea sex, and then there's idea negatives. What about idea addition? Well, what if I take a rap song and add violins to it? Or what if I take a rock song, a classic rock song, and add just like violins, and instead of having men sing it, have women sing it. Think of the song Creep. So if you look at the song Creep, which is one of Radiohead's best songs, I actually hate the song, but I love the song when it's sung by this group called Scala, because they took the original song and they added to it. They said, let's make the singing better. And they just did that one change, and boom, it's better. Or take a late show, like, think about the formats of The Tonight Show. So Johnny Carson had The Tonight Show. David Letterman added to it. He basically said, what if I do man on the street sketches that are a little bit more offbeat? So that's the David Letterman show. And then you have Jimmy Fallon. What if I take and make these games with celebrities so that they're very clippable for internet? So he took the format of The Tonight Show and he added to it and took it one step further. Now you go to an extreme. Look at the Eric Andre show. And if you don't know the Eric Andre show, it's the most insane late night show ever. He said, let's take the format of a late night show and let's do it as if this was just our temp job. Let's pretend to be a late night show host, but very poorly in the back of a bodega. And he takes the exact same format. He has a band, he has a desk, he has guests, but he always plays this role as if he's just a temp employee doing a late night show's job. And that's how he expands that idea, makes it work. So all of these different techniques are really the only ways to innovate. So I always feel bad, like my initial attempts at entrepreneurship, I was very much a Me Too entrepreneur. I said, this idea works, so I'm just gonna copy it exactly, and that's what I'm gonna do. And it would work okay, but it was never great. So my first business was, I built websites for other companies. There were other agencies doing that. I wasn't new at all. The only way I could differentiate myself was by lowering the price. But eventually I had enough employees, I couldn't lower the price that much. So the only way I could differentiate myself was, I had an expertise in entertainment companies. But that's not really a big difference. So if I thought from the beginning, what are some ways to differentiate myself, I bet I would have had a much stronger business model. And so this is kind of true for almost every business I've started. I wish I had thought more on these ideas of idea sex, idea math, idea subtraction, idea negatives. I think it's a lot more powerful to think that way. And so, like I was just reading yesterday about a company that, I hate when it's so bright, the screen. I was just reading yesterday about a company that has these flying drones, and they sort of combine the ideas of how insects work with the ideas of drones, with the ideas of thermal cameras. So you're going to start seeing all these like tiny drones flying around, or you might not see them. They might be so small, and they're going to see who has coronavirus, who has a fever, who doesn't. So again, they're taking these traditional ideas from drones, combining it with insects, combining it with thermal cameras, which is the hot new buzzword, and boom, they have a company. And using maybe the same technologies from drone technology, just making everything smaller. So Jay, I'm gonna look for your IG link, IG live link. Did you send it to me yet? I don't. Oh, here we go. Wish it wasn't so bright. Jay, do you have the older questions in here? What's happening with the housing market and the virus? Boom. That's the question of the century. So here's what's happening. don't think of the housing market. There's no one market for houses. There's no stores for houses where it's the same price. All over the country and all over the world, housing prices are different. So ask yourself a question. Why do you want to live someplace? So I remember one time I was talking to this guy about housing, and he was a very good real estate investor, and he told me this idea. He said, "Where did the surfers go?" So he said, I always follow surfers. And at first that didn't make sense to me. So he said, think about it. Surfers, people who surf, whether it's for a living or just for fun, surfers go to where it's a beautiful location because it's right on the beach. It has to be a good beach. There's got to be a good ocean with nice waves. So they always go to these beautiful areas. And by the way, surfers are usually the children of, well-to-do California people. So you're seeing, what countries are surfers in? They don't want to go to a place where there's going to be, rebels or drug cartels that are kidnapping them and killing them and holding them for ransom. So where are the surfers going? Because then pretty soon other services will open up, like, restaurants or banks to handle the surfers' money. And then eventually houses will start to be built there. And so now more and more people are going down, following the surfers down to wherever they are. And then the healthcare system will probably improve. Or maybe the healthcare system had already improved, which is why the surfers were there. And so more and more things will happen. And it tends to be, if you just follow the surfers, that tends to be where the good real estate is. So before Costa Rica was a big thing, this guy bought land in Costa Rica. Then Panama. Then, Portugal. And Portugal is one of these undervalued places in Europe right now versus, Italy or France or whatever. So then you have to ask, well, where did people want to go where they don't want to go anymore? And so you have to ask New York City or LA. Elon Musk has his house for sale right now, 2,700 square foot house, which is tiny by most standards for a house. He has it for sale for $9.5 million in LA. Are you going to buy, if you were just told, hey man, I got this 2,700 square foot house for sale for $9.5 million, you would say, are you crazy? The average price in the United States for 2,700 square foot house is about $350,000. Why would I pay an extra $9 million? You pay extra anything for either, the location, because you really want to be in a certain location and there's limited supply, or you pay for brand. So, people always say, and I say it, the price is a function of supply and demand. But that's not totally true. Price is a function of supply, demand, and brand. So, Poland Springs water has no value by itself, but it has this brand. Oh, it's fresh and clean from Poland. From Polish Springs. And so you're going to pay $5 for a gallon instead of just getting it for free out of your tap and putting it through a filter if you want. That's free water, but a lot of people are willing to pay $5 more. So the price is really a factor of supply and demand plus bullshit and how much people believe the bullshit. And so when everyone talks about, hey, how can I develop my personal brand? I always think to myself, well, you're a person and then there's bullshit. So your personal brand is you plus all your bullshit. So I hate that concept of a personal brand. Just be you, and that's how you actually, if you generate value inside yourself as opposed to the external bullshit, that's how you have the most value. And then I try to think, what jobs are bullshit? So, I think in general, being a lawyer is bullshit. So I'll tell you a story. One time I was starting a hedge fund. And when I first started a hedge fund, I called a lawyer who specialized in this, and he sold me all the documents and paperwork. He said, I'm writing it up. He interviewed me. What's your hedge fund about? What are all the rules? Blah, blah, blah. And for $30,000, I had all the contracts I needed for a hedge fund. Well, when I started a second hedge fund, I just took all those contracts and changed the names and did a cut and paste, and I didn't have to pay $30,000. I just created a new hedge fund because everything else the lawyer was doing, it took me an hour to completely have fully functional legal paperwork, and I had already spent the $30,000. Everything else And so this lawyer, eventually someone showed him my contracts, and he called me up and he was yelling at me on the phone. He was yelling. He said, I've never before, in all my 30 years in the legal industry, I never saw someone so blatantly steal my work. You had to come to me for this paperwork. And I said, I already paid for your $30,000 for this, and it took me 45 minutes to just do cut and paste to make new paperwork. I own these documents. I paid for them. I don't understand why I would have to pay you for it again. And that's the difference between value and bullshit. Because lawyers, we put them on this pedestal. Oh, you have to have a lawyer look at the final legal documents, and you just have to pay. A good lawyer is just going to cost money. They're going to cost $600 an hour. And it's just bullshit. They take a will or they take a divorce and they just cut and paste. And that's why LegalZoom is such a great business. LegalZoom was started in the early 00s, and most contracts you shouldn't have to pay any money for. It should be free. I think the internet's done a good job of removing a lot of bullshit from industries, but unfortunately, lawyers, for many things, you have to use a lawyer, and a lawyer has to go 7 years to school, 4 years undergrad, 3 years to law school. And that's why a lot of the educational system and a lot of regulations about who an expert is just bullshit. I'm an expert now in creating documents for hedge fund managers. I've made enough of these documents myself without using a lawyer, and they've all worked. No one's complained. My lawyer thought that they were so good that he was angry at me because I hadn't paid him $30,000 for the second time around. So all I'm trying to say is the housing market, take into account what's the bullshit factor. So LA, I'll use New York City as an example. The reason someone moves to New York City is for the business opportunities, because all the wealth is in New York City. Cities like New York City. There's a lot of culture. There's museums. There's Broadway. There's concerts. There's great restaurants. There's comedy clubs and bars and lots of young people to meet. And it becomes this place that's so dense that you're going to have a lot of idea sex in New York City, because ideas are just going to start meshing with each other. Well, that might not exist anymore in New York City. The restaurants are going to close, some of them. The movie theaters are going to close. The cultural events and institutions are going to close. So you're going to end up, the price should go down on residential real estate. But meanwhile, where are the New Yorkers going? Well, they're going to go to, a lot of people I know are going to Miami. A lot of people I know are going to Austin. A lot of people I know are going to Boulder, Colorado, or Chicago, Illinois, or, Puerto Rico. I know a lot of people going to because there's no taxes. So a lot of the reasons have gone down. So the bullshit factor has gone up. So I do think housing across the country is going to be okay, but overall, the money's going to flow in different ways. New York City is going to go down, and that money that would have gone into New York City is going to be spread out for the rest of the country. So some parts of the country might go up a little bit. New York City and LA and San Francisco will go way down. And then let's say they go down by $10 billion. That $10 billion will be spread out across the rest of the country. So other markets will just go up a little bit, but New York City will tank. And so that's what I think will happen in the housing market. And again, I can't say that with certainty. Part of the what will happen next questions is being able to accept that we don't really know. So for instance, if I say to people, what do you think is going to happen with movie theaters in New York City? Everybody says they're going to crash. No one's going to go to movies anymore. You're going to be crowded in a movie theater, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of agree. But you also have to say at the end of that, but I don't really know. There is uncertainty. And maybe movie theaters should change. Like maybe movie theaters should offer more kinds of food, or maybe instead of going to a movie theater and watching a movie, I should be able to binge watch a Netflix series on the huge screen with all of my friends and we're eating popcorn and whatever. Or maybe movie theaters should turn into these cloud kitchens that we spoke about a few days ago. So who knows what will happen? Every business is going to change a little bit and pivot, as they say. So I'm gonna look for more questions. I'm going to talk about copywriting. More copywriting tips is a question. I'll get to that in a second. Where's the best place to put your cash? Interesting question. And it's also related to the fact that we don't know a lot of things. I will tell you where I put my cash. I have a checking account, a savings account. I have it in multiple banks, and I don't. And they're all these banks are always calling me, "Hey, you have X number of dollars in your savings account. Wouldn't it be better if you sit down with a money manager and invest? You might as well put this money to work for you." No, I kind of don't like my money to work for me. I kind of like my money to just rest, relax, take your time, take it easy, don't stress so much. When I go to sleep, my money goes to sleep. I don't need all of my money. I'm not Napoleon with an army. I don't need every dollar bill to be working for me all the time. Like, some of my money should just relax so that I know when I go to sleep that even if, God forbid, a pandemic hits the planet and the economy shuts down, my money is still safe. Now you could say, but James, your money's not safe. The Federal Reserve just printed $6 trillion. Won't that lead to hyperinflation? And the answer is, I don't know. Because right now, I'm getting emails. Here's the Gap. 75% off all clothes across all our stores. Well, that's not a special sale. That means the price of clothing at the Gap is now 75% down. That's 75% deflation. Suddenly, my cash is worth more today than it was worth. So instead of buying one sweater at the Gap, I could buy 4 sweaters at the Gap with the same amount of money. So my cash that has been just sitting and resting and doing nothing, I've gotten probably 30 calls in the past 6 months. Shouldn't you put your money to work for you? Shouldn't you put your money to work? Why don't you sit down with one of our money managers? No, thank you. Or maybe later. Now my cash, just doing nothing, is worth more because the world economy has deflated. Now, it's going to reinflate because of the stimulus, but not yet. It'll take a few months. Second, is there going to be hyperinflation? No. So somebody pointed to me, James, I think you better look at this. Somebody pointed to me to an article about, I forgot what the country was about. Maybe it was about Greece or Turkey or whatever. This one country owned a lot of debt. Oh, maybe it was Lebanon. This one country owed a lot of debt to the EU. And they couldn't pay it back, so there was starting to be hyperinflation in this country. They owed so much debt. Well, if we owe debt to the EU, we might be in trouble. But the US owes debt to the US. The biggest debt holder of the US is the Federal Reserve. So we owe money to ourselves. And when you have debt that is in the same currency as your currency, so in after World War I, Germany, the currency was marks, but they owed dollars in debt. So they kept printing up more and more marks to try to feed the dollars that they needed, but that results in hyperinflation. We print up dollars to pay our debt in dollars. Now you can say, well, still, won't that reduce the value of the dollar? And the answer is maybe. We don't know. It depends. 5 years from now, do people still want to own dollars? Like right now, China wants to own more dollars and they want to own their own currency. And the reason is because they always mark their currency down on purpose so that the US outsources manufacturing into China. This is econ lesson number 2 in this podcast. So if, China has always kept their currency low relative to the dollar, and the only way, the reason they can do that is because they lend a ton of money to the dollar. So they push the dollar up. China's demand for the US dollar is huge. So the US dollar can keep on increasing supply, and China's demand is never ending because they always want their currency to be lower. And it's not just China, it's the EU, it's India, it's Russia, it's the entire oil industry. Everybody wants US dollars because they want their currency lower, weaker than the US dollar. So we go outside of the US to buy things that are cheaper. So right now, that puts deflation on the US dollar. If nobody wanted the US dollar anymore, then the US dollar, in order to get demand, interest rates would have to go higher. So you want to buy dollars. You don't want to lend dollars. You want to buy dollars because the interest rates are higher. So essentially, we're not in a hyperinflationary period. I was very rough with that explanation, but I am not worried about hyperinflation for the moment. I am more worried about deflation. Deflation is a serious issue. Why was the stimulus package $2.5 trillion? It was because the Federal Reserve assumed we would have $2.5 trillion less spending. So dollar for dollar, they replaced it. They replaced the lack of spending in the economy right now with stimulus. What if they were wrong? What if over the next 2 quarters there's $6 trillion spending that we need to replace? Well, they're going to have to pass another stimulus package. So all of these things are in flux, and we don't really know. But smart people are trying to solve this, but they may have the right answers. They may not have the right answers. We saw an example yesterday. The guy who made all the models for Imperial College that the whole world based their economic policy on, turns out he was a lying scumbag. What can you do? We trusted the experts. And people will say, I would rather trust science than someone who's always criticizing the experts. No, science is about speculating whether the experts are correct. Wherever we are, new science questions the results of the older science, and that's how science evolves and changes. Now, some things never change. 1 + 1 will always equal 2. But sometimes Pluto is just not a planet anymore. It was a planet, now it's not a planet. But I thought that was science. Shouldn't we trust the scientists? No, because Pluto, we were wrong about how much it weighed, and so boom, or how much mass there was, boom, it's not a planet anymore. It doesn't fit the definition of a planet. Maybe it'll be a planet next year. I don't know. I'm going to drink something. How's everybody doing? Put a bunch of likes if everybody's doing fine. Victoria, you're right. Pluto is a dog at Disney. Disney is a very interesting situation where, you think, let's say Walt Disney was very focused. He was very focused. Walt Disney loved making animated movies. His first business was called Laugh-O-Gram Inc. And he would make 12-minute movies to play at the beginning of movies. He'd make these 12-minute animations, and he totally just shit the bed. Like he blew up, he went bankrupt, he went out of business. He had to borrow money from his parents. He started another company called Disney, and somebody bought the movie Alice in Wonderland, and so his movies started selling, but he wasn't making any money. He couldn't figure out how to make money. It's the Great Depression. It was 1933. It was the year with the greatest unemployment in U.S. history until 2020. We're going to beat 1932. It's 2020. We're going to beat the unemployment rate of 1932. But so imagine being Walt Disney right now. And he's like, oh my God, there's 20% unemployment. Nobody's going out to see Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I'm going to have another company that goes bankrupt. And someone from Kansas City took a 2-day bus ride, took all his cash, put it on Walt Disney's desk and said, I'll pay you this money if you let me put Mickey Mouse on a watch. And Walt Disney was like, a watch? I'm not in the watch business. I'm in the movie business. And this guy said, no. You're in the everything business. View your movie as a focus group for what merchandise will sell. So Walt Disney's like, okay, but it's kind of embarrassing. Mickey Mouse is in my movies. Now you're going to put him on, it seems cheap to put him on a watch. So they put Mickey Mouse on a watch. They priced it at $1, and they sold 1 million watches. I think they sold 3 million watches the next year. And suddenly, Disney, they had never made a profit before. Suddenly Disney was profitable, and they were the biggest watchmaker on the planet. And that's how Disney, even though you think of them for the movies or the parks or Pixar or now for Star Wars and Marvel and whatever, Disney's a multi-hundred billion dollar, Disney Plus, the new TV service, has 54 million subscribers already. But it all came from Mickey Mouse watches in the Great Depression. So that's how, if you're driving down a lane, don't be afraid to find another path that's less crowded, because you might end up getting to the destination faster, and it might be more scenic, and it might be more interesting, and you skip completely the car accidents that inevitably happen on very crowded roads. Did I just stretch that analogy to the limit? I think I destroyed that analogy. What's my biggest cure for, Jay, I didn't answer more copywriting tips. Don't cross that one out yet. What's your biggest cure for fear of missing out? I have fear of missing out all the time. So like with the stock market, if you miss the buy, everybody, while the stock market's going down, everyone's like, I'm not buying yet. I see a lot more danger. Everybody suddenly becomes a stock market analyst. Just like right now on Twitter, everybody's a closet epidemiologist or neuroscientist or whatever. But everybody seems to know, like, I don't know about the market. Everything's going to go down a lot further. Well, when everything starts coming back up, like the stock market's bounced like 20 or 30% off the lows, suddenly now everyone has fear of missing out. Like, maybe it's too late. Maybe it's just going to keep going up. Let me tell you something. There are always, always, always opportunities. And that's in every area of life. I used to think, man, the internet's done. I can't even create a new internet company. Okay, so I thought about that. I thought that thought in 2006. Well, since then, Instagram was created. We're on Instagram right now. Instagram was created during the Great Recession of 2009. Slack started in 2009. Dropbox started. Uber started. So all these, by the way, Instagram is an incredibly basic technology. You could have made the exact technology for Instagram minus the phone stuff in 1993. You could have made Dropbox in 1993. There's no rocket science in any of these new internet companies. And they're very basic. Like, let's make one big website where you could store all the other websites. Dropbox. Let's make a place where people could upload photos so their friends could see it. And let's make filters so that the photos change a little bit. That technology's been here since, the internet aspect's been here, or the web aspect's been here since 1991. And all of those other things I just said have been here since 1980 or earlier. So very few new tech businesses use tech. You have to look hard for innovation in technology. I mean, I think there's some innovation right now happening in robotics and in drones. There's tiny innovation happening in AI. AI right now is almost the same as AI in the 1980s or even 1970s. Tiny differences. The big difference is we have much more access to your personal data. So that means I could take your personal data and run AI on it from the 80s and come up with conclusions about you so I could better show you ads. So that's one of the main innovations in AI. Not the only one, but one of the main ones. It's very hard to find actually new technology. So yeah, someone says the cloud is just another computer. That's just it. They call it the cloud. You know what the cloud looks like? The cloud is just a warehouse with a bunch of computers, a bunch of old computers just racked together. And there's some software to help search queries search your storage in the cloud. The cloud is like basic technology. It's just that computers are faster, so it's easier now to store. It's easier now than it was prior to store data anywhere in the world. So I even forgot what question I was answering, but I feel like I answered some question there. What question was I? Oh, what's the biggest cure for FOMO? So yes, my point is you can still come up with business ideas using basic technology. You know, and sometimes I even think about this in comedy. Like I was just watching Jerry Seinfeld's new Netflix special, and I'm like, man, those premises he's using, they're so simple, but now I can't use them because he used them. But that's not true. Like if you look at Louis C.K. or Jim Gaffigan, they use such very simple premises over and over. Like both Louis C.K. and Jim Gaffigan have jokes about how great bacon is. Or you know, Jim Gaffigan has a joke, I want everybody here to know I'm up for a really big role. And the audience will clap and he'll say, thank you. Yeah, it's a Cinnabon roll. And so that's a Jim Gaffigan joke. Louis C.K. has a joke like, you ever find yourself at the airport after you get off a plane online at the Cinnabon for a Cinnabon roll, and he's just like, and you're only 20 minutes from your home, and you couldn't wait to just stuff your fat face full of like a Cinnabon roll. So you're standing in line there, just like ashamed and looking down. And so they take the same premise that a Cinnabon roll is just disgusting, and they make fun of it in different ways. So even when I listen to jokes, I think, oh my gosh, he already took that premise. He did it in the best way possible. But look, they took the premise. They have completely different conclusions. And so there's never actually a fear of missing out. No matter what area of your life you're in, there's always the next opportunity. Oh, you met the perfect girl at a bar last night and you forgot to get her number? Or all your friends are going out to a party where the love of your life might be? Don't worry. The love of your life is going to be at the next party also. Again, we've got dopamine, which we're always out there looking for love in all the wrong places. And dopamine will help you fall in love. And then eventually when the dopamine wears off, when dopamine it always makes you want to have more. When you no longer are getting more from your girlfriend or spouse or husband or whatever, the same excited feelings will level off. And that's when you need that serotonin chemical to kick in, so you become happy with what you have and you enjoy it. And it's not just a cliche, hey, be happy with what you have. It's real. You can actually be very, very happy, even more happy than that initial excitement. You can be very deeply happy with what you have. And you look at some people are addicts. So addiction might be where you become, you become more and more focused on only one thing makes you happy. So Mick Jagger says he's had sex with 4,000 women. It's because he got more and more focused that the only thing he needed was more sex. He didn't value the aspect of having maybe he didn't learn the skill of being happy with what you have, because it was easy for him to always get more. So he never transferred that over to learning how to be happy with what he had. By the way, even if I wasn't married, it would probably take me about 7,000 lifetimes to have sex with 4,000 people, just based on my current run rate. So fortunately, I'm married. Hopefully it'll be with the same person for the rest of my life. I'm pretty sure it will be, unless she dies first, but I'm planning on dying first. And so I've solved that problem for my life. I have certainty there. I'm going to die before she does. So I don't have to worry about it. Now I'll go to another question. This is an easy one. I'm going to go with an easy one first. How many hours a day do I sleep? I sleep 8 hours a day. If I even sleep 7.5 hours a day, I am not functional at all. Here's a question. What are my streams of income, and what did I love about reading the book Sapiens? 2 different questions. I'm going to answer those tomorrow, because I did promise that I would talk about copywriting. And this is a very, very important topic. Why is copywriting important? Because, hold on, making a darkened screen. Copywriting is the way you sell things. So if you develop, let me tell you a story. Somebody put up a bunch of knives somebody bought a bunch of knives in China and did an experiment. They put the knives up without any description on eBay, and on eBay is an auction. So the price sold for whatever, I'm just gonna make this up, $10. Then they wrote a story. These knives came from Beijing, and it's from the best, a restaurant right, 1 mile from where the president of China lives, right in the center of Beijing. It's one of the best restaurants in town. And they put the same knives on eBay. The knives sell for 4 times as much. So when you tell a story side by side with selling a product, it is much more powerful than just displaying the product. And people who are in sales was like, hey, people either like it or they don't like it. I'm not going to try to persuade them to like it. Well, then you're not going to sell any copies of what you're doing. You're not going to be able to sell your services. You're not going to be able to sell products. Stories sell products, period. But with copywriting, you can't just be like John Grisham and tell a story about knives and then suddenly they will sell. You can't just write a story. You have to copywrite. So copywriting is this idea of writing ad sales copy, and you have to use very specific techniques. One is you have to describe why your product is useful. So a product, a pan, a new kind of pan might be useful because you don't have to like scrub to clean it. You just turn it over and everything falls into the garbage, and you've just cleaned your pots and pans in 5 seconds. So it's useful. Then so there's the 4 U's: useful, unique, ultra specific, and I always forget one of the U's: useful, unique, ultra specific, urgent. And so then you could say, okay, I got this pan. It's very useful because I just turn it upside down over the garbage can, and all the dirt falls out, and all the germs, and all the eggs stuck on the bottom. I don't have to scrub anymore. It's just really easy. So that's useful. Urgent. I only have a limited supply of these, and so I'm gonna have to sell everything and I'm gonna have to get rid of it by the end of the month. I'm moving, blah blah blah. So there's urgency. You put some urgency in there. Unique. Now here's where you could tell a story. Well, I was really sick of my old pots and pans, and I used to be a PhD in chemistry. So I remember this one substance, when I combined it with this other substance, it created a completely non-stick surface. And so I'm the only one who did my PhD in unique unsticking surfaces. So that's why this is special. So that's unique. And you just told a little bit of a story. And ultra specific is, you get ultra specific about what it does. So basically you say, it doesn't just clean your pan fast, it cleans your whole pan in 5 seconds. So you get very specific. The pan is made out of alumina, chloride, copper, peptide, and it cleans your pan instantly in 5 seconds. So now you're ultra specific about the qualities of this. So that's the 4 U's. And if you give me any product, like let's say your local dentist says, hey, I really like to get new customers. You can say, okay, I'll write copy for you. Or even better, let's just analyze the bullshit copy that you see, the sales letters you see on the internet. So you don't just say, nobody says, oh, buy a newsletter from this investment guy. We might have some good picks for you. Nobody copyrights an ad pitch or a sales pitch like that. They say, here's a hedge fund manager who was 20 years in the business, and he predicted the 2008 recession. You'll never believe what he's predicting now. So now he's, we're doing a little bit of everything, but he's unique in that he predicted the 2008 recession. He's been a hedge fund manager for 20 years. He's useful because he's got a new pick for you right now. It's urgent. You could say in the copy itself, you could say, he can't give this pick to everyone because then it won't be useful anymore. The stock will go up too much. So you have to buy this within the next 3 days or else the pick is going away. And by the way, there's only a 20% discount for the next 3 days, and then that discount goes away. And it's ultra specific. He predicted the 2008 conference by saying this. And his pick is on what industry. This little known 53-cent stock in the drone industry is going to skyrocket, and no one knows about it. And here's why the drone industry is going up, because there's been 53,271 drones sold in the United States, but now everyone's going to be using drones for tracking and tracing. Boom. We just did the 4 U's. Now there's more. Most copywriting sites have just the 4 U's, but you need to use other aspects of persuasion. So persuasion there's techniques in persuasion that go beyond copywriting. So there's something called social proof. So you have in the sales letter or in the sales pitch, you have testimonials. Like, I got so-and-so's investment picks in 2012 and I made $1 million in a year. Or, and that's from, Ruth H. in Oklahoma City. And then you have a bunch of social proof. Then you have another technique is called authority. So, Warren Buffett used this guy's advice to, make Berkshire Hathaway huge, or this guy used to be Warren Buffett's number 2 advisor. So now you have authority. So you have social proof, authority, urgency, ultra specific, unique, and the whatever, I keep forgetting the 4th U. Useful. And Then you have a technique called Reciprocity. Hey, if you buy now, not only will we send you the newsletter, but we'll send you a whole book this guy wrote just for new subscribers on the basic techniques of investing. So there's a giveaway because if I give you something, your brain has a cognitive bias to want to give me something. Now there's another bias in copywriting. So if you put up an ad on Facebook, let's say your ad says, click here to see the #1 stock pick for the new normal. And you have to click within the next 3 days. So we try to put as much of the use in the ad. But now they go to a letter, and you ask yourself, why is this letter 40 pages long? Have you ever noticed that these sales letters are 40 pages long? Just someone say yes if you've seen a sales pitch that's seems abnormally long. We're like, oh my God, when are they going to tell me how much this costs? Or when are they going to tell me the actual thing that it is? The thing is, if you spend 40 pages reading something, your brain is actually a pretty stupid organ in the body. But your brain thinks it's very smart. And so your brain will say to you, hey, you just read 40 pages of this, and I'm the brain, and I'm smart. So I didn't read this because I'm stupid. I read this because I'm smart. So your brain has a cognitive bias. It's called commitment bias. You've committed to reading an abnormal amount of time on this letter, so that makes you more likely to buy. That's the weird trick that they do in these copywriting letters. That's why they're 40 pages. The other thing they do is, how do they fill up 40 pages? Well, they tell story after story after story. Again, storytelling is very important. The better you are at storytelling, the better your copy will be. And then they do repetition. So they'll say, don't forget, he worked for 20 years for Warren Buffett, and then he predicted the great financial crisis. And don't forget, we're going to give you a book, too, for free. And don't forget, we're an expert on drones. This guy's an expert on drones, and he found a tiny stock because he was a college roommate with the CEO. But before you click, but before we tell you the price, we want to tell you one more thing we're giving you for free. Just one more thing. We're going to give you, you're going to have a chance to get a plane ticket to come and meet him, and he'll tell you in person. And then blah, blah, blah. But then one more thing. We have to tell you that if you get this now, you're going to get 20 books, 20 of this investor's favorite investing books for free along with this, because he wants you to have knowledge of investing. So it triggers, there's repetition. They repeat all the things they're offering you each time. Repetition makes the brain more and more familiar. Oh, this is old news to me. He's already an expert. Now you're telling me again he's an expert? So repetition triggers all these cognitive biases as well. So you're saying, so why so long? My attention span doesn't participate. Well, the good thing is, so this is to Mata Za. A lot of people say that. A lot of people say, oh, this sales letter is so long. I'm never gonna finish it. That's good. You're not the customer. The people who finish the letter are the customers. They want you to click out as fast as possible if you're not one of the eventual customers. By the way, for a sales letter like that, it might be only 1% convert into customers, 1 out of 100. 99 out of 100 will go click away. But if you don't do these copywriting techniques, only 1 out of 1,000, I tested this, 1 out of 1,000 will buy. I once said to people marketing something for me, why are you writing this 60-page letter? It's so boring to read through this letter. I can't stand it. And they even said, you're not the audience. And I said, well, look, I am the audience. I'll do it. So I wrote a sales copy. It was 1 page, and it was a good story, and it was everything I thought was attractive about the product. I sold 10 times less than the copy that sold 1 out of 100. So I sold 1 out of 1,000. Their ad, which was awful writing from a writing perspective, but great writing from a copywriting perspective, they sold 1 out of 100. I sold with good writing, but bad copywriting, I sold 1 out of 1,000. So you say, oh, it's so long, it makes it boring. Yeah, you're not the customer. They don't want you. They want the person who's going to read till the end. Now, there's a new technique, which is that don't just make it a long letter, make it a long video. So now more senses are being engaged. They engaged in the words. They're engaging the hearing and the seeing. So the more senses are engaged, and then it's a 40-minute video oh, I'm not going to sit there and watch a 40-minute video. Yeah, because you're not the customer. The people who do sit there, a significant percentage of them, their brains is a cognitive bias. You were here for an hour. Now you should buy because you're not a stupid person. So there must have been a reason. So you have a cognitive bias now to buy. Now they took it even one step further. There's no longer the video. There's no longer the copywriting video. There's the copywriting webinar. So, and you've seen this has been popular for a while, but it's very popular on the internet right now, is that the expert, our 20-year hedge fund manager or whatever, is now being interviewed by a host. And it's a webinar. It's almost like a reporter interviewing somebody on a TV show. And there might even be a background. Then this is the authority part. There might be a background with a ticker tape running and the news screens running. And so it looks like it has authority. It looks like a professional news station. Or it looks like, like this is a real professional conference where someone's interviewing someone. You don't read that everyone's reading copy material. Both the host and the expert, they're reading off a teleprompter because they're reading the copywritten letter, but they're just doing it in a webinar format. Turns out that is even better than the 40-minute video or the 40-minute page letter. It's the 60-minute webinar. If you listen to the entire webinar, there's a big chance you're going to buy. So these are part of the secrets of copywriting. I used just a couple of examples, but if you send me examples, I can describe how copywriting might work for other products. But if you look at the George Foreman grill. Look at that guy who was always running with the long blonde hair or whatever. Look at the Tony Robbins shows from the 90s. And they all use these copywriting techniques. Or today, when you get some kind of spam email with copywriting on it, this Maryland millionaire has his one secret that he's about to reveal to a select group of people. Just do me a favor. Click on that. Read through the whole copy. Don't buy. Read through the whole copy, and you'll be able to identify urgency, ultra specific, unique. I can't remember 4 U's. Urgency, ultra specific, useful, unique, and you'll find them. And then you'll find social proof, testimonials. Then you'll find authority. So-and-so spoke at the Federal Reserve, blah, blah, blah. You'll find storytelling, like this person went broke in 2008, but then when he predicted the crisis, he turned $10 into $1 billion, and now he wants to share the secrets with you. So there'll be a story that's the story will be a perfect story, the arc of the hero, everything, and so just be aware. Some of these are good writing techniques, actually, but I'm just dissecting for you what copywriting is. And again, the best copywriting, of course, is honest, but because copywriting uses such cognitive bias techniques, they can act. The shame is criminals can get away with doing something dishonest because it's so powerful, the copywriting techniques, that you'll be persuaded even if it's dishonest. The key is, of course, to have an honest product, and then, sure, go ahead and do copywriting techniques because you want to make money, you want to sell. That's what sales is having an ability to tell a story honestly and give a pitch. The testimonials have to be real. The authority has to be real. The stories have to be real. The stock pick you really have to feel is going to go up and zoom up or whatever. But you still can't sell something honest unless you use copywriting techniques because everyone else is using these techniques. So I'll go over some more stuff about persuasion tomorrow and maybe some industries and some ways you can use copywriting as a side hustle. Because, by the way, there are a lot of techniques in copywriting that can turn into a side hustle. I know copywriters who, just as a side hustle, have made millions of dollars. Copywriting is enormously effective. And we can go over some stuff tomorrow, and I will answer some of these other questions tomorrow, like, what are my streams of income? What are my personal streams of income? What did I love about Sapiens? Here's a challenge. I kind of want to do a little bit of, just to close this off. We didn't do Cosmopolitan's headlines of the day. I'm sorry, I'm going to get back to that tomorrow. Oh, and I only have 27 seconds remaining. Tired, Wired. I want you to think of some ideas. The Crown, Tired, Tiger King, Wired. Money, Tired, Toilet Paper, Wired. The challenge for you, come up with more Tireds and Wireds. I'll save this in my IG stories, and I'm going to save this later on YouTube. See you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Thank you very much.